of territory right now. The Dow is down. Oh, wait a minute. Am I right about that? No, I'm not. What am I talking about? See, this is what happens. I don't even know what time it is. I'm looking at yesterday's numbers. I was wondering why my screen wasn't moving. It was just sitting there. Anyway, forget that. The market's open in about 4 minutes. I'll tell you what the real number is. It's not a good day. You sure there's a lot of people on the phone. You sure you want to call in and ask me a question today? Because I'm not in great form today. But anyway. Oh, man. We will, there's a lot of talk about the fiscal cliff. There was an article this morning in the Wall Street Journal. Well, it wasn't in the Wall Street Journal. It was, I forget where it was, but talking about stop calling the fiscal cliff a fiscal cliff because it's not a fiscal cliff. It is not something that is going to dramatically impact the people on January 1st. Let me ask you something. Does anybody really believe that your life's going to change January 1st? The premise of the article was kind of ridiculous to me. It was a bit of an insult to the intelligence of the American people that are hearing fiscal cliff. I mean, does anybody think the world's going to end January 1st, 2nd, or 3rd when we talk about the fiscal cliff? The idea of the fiscal cliff is all the things that are going to end, all the things that are going to stop. Now, will there be an impact in the next couple of months? Sure, there will be. There will probably even be an immediate impact because I suspect there will be some companies that are going to lay some people off. And there's also a bunch of companies right now that are saying that they're going to lay people off just as a result of Obamacare. Now you add on to that the people that are likely to lay off people as a result of no tax reform and more tax problems, things are going to get worse. You got companies, restaurants. You got Applebee's now and Olive Garden, a number of restaurants that have come out and say they're not going to hire people. They're going to lay off people, and they're going to go back and they're going to make sure that everybody they have working for them is not working more than 30 hours a week. So, that's going to be pretty much their scheduling program. They've also talked about maybe putting on hold over 300 new outlets in restaurants alone just in that chain. And what's that going to do? That's going to hurt the construction industry, of course. I mean, there are so far over 70 companies that have said that they're not going to be hiring, and as a matter of fact, they're going to lay off as a result of all this. The big question is, are we going to, I'm anxious. Here's the thing, folks. I'm anxious to see, and I told you this, I'm anxious to see what happens with the EPA in the next couple of weeks. I'm anxious to see what happens with the Keystone Pipeline as protesters now move in on Washington, D.C. for a rally and a protest against the Keystone Pipeline. So I'm anxious to see what happens with all of that. What I mean by that, I'm anxious to see what the Obama administration does and what his EPA does. I'm anxious to see what his EPA does with North Dakota and what's going to happen there. We've got oil that is in the Rust Belt there of Ohio that Chesapeake Energy says they're going to have to think twice about that, probably move on. It's about rules and regulations and EPA oversight. We are staring at, and one tax we have not talked about is a possible carbon tax that has not been ruled out by the EPA, that we're going to have a carbon tax. That is, in fact, what cap and trade was all about. It's the most damaging thing that could happen. Let me tell you something, folks. When we start having a carbon tax on everything, the government will be controlling every single thing that everybody does, period. The government will control it. That sounds a little bit like some hyperbole there, Dan. No, it's not, folks. So you're a baker. You've got 3 employees, and you bake cakes and some rolls and some breads and things like that. You start your day at 3 in the morning. You go. You've got a few employees, and you're a baking company. You're probably going to be out of business because you're either going to have to charge $10 for a loaf of bread, or you're going to, have to go out of business. There's not going to be a lot of options because you, unfortunately, being a baker, use an enormous amount of energy in order to earn your income. The carbon tax that they're talking about is going to hammer you. You're going to get clobbered. I'm going to pay a little bit more carbon tax because I heat with natural gas than someone that maybe would heat with electric. I'm assuming that. I don't know. Someone that heats with oil is even going to get it worse. The coal industry will be non-existent. It's going to hurt the rail systems, the mining industry, companies like Caterpillar. It's going to hurt large companies like a DuPont that spends an enormous amount of energy every year on production. Do you know what kind of carbon footprint they make and the tax that they're going to be faced with? Is it going to be so great that companies like that are going to be forced to do any expansion in manufacturing or new plants, if they were planning any, to move it to Ireland or move it to somewhere else? Sure, it's going to be to their advantage to do that. Why would Honda come over and build another plant here in the United States? Why does Toyota want to get their new plant in Mississippi running full steam ahead, a plant that's going to require an enormous amount of energy to work, and the carbon tax on it is going to be astronomical? Does anybody think about the unintended consequence of all this, or is it purely ideology that's driving everything? This is insanity. So I think we have to watch to see what the EPA is doing, only because it is going to set a tone. We are going to learn an awful lot in the next couple of weeks about what this president is going to do. Forget about the fiscal cliff. Forget about the lack of negotiations. Forget about raising the debt ceiling. Forget about all that stuff. But when we look at the EPA, we're going to get answers on all of that stuff, because we are going to be able to see what this president is going to do. We are going to find out in a short period of time whether this president has any desire whatsoever to get this economy on the move again. Or is his goal to have $8 a gallon gasoline and an electric car in every driveway and a windmill in every backyard, I guess. I don't know. I mean, maybe that's going to be his goal. But we will find out, I think, in a very short period of time. Aside from the fiscal cliff negotiations that are going on and are going to start going on, which, by the way, I don't know how any of that can happen when we've got this enormous smokescreen of Benghazi and Petraeus hanging over everybody's head, monopolizing the media. It's a beautiful thing for this president. For Republicans, too. For Democrats in Congress. I know we all slept better last night because we know Congress came back in session yesterday. There's that sigh of relief. Oh, phew, Congress is back, and I know they're going to do their job, and they're going to get right to work. I know we all slept better. But are they going to do their job? Do they have to? Or is all the focus going to be on, the Secretary of Defense, the Secretary of State, and Benghazi, which I'm not discounting that. I am so appalled about Benghazi, I can't even talk about it. I really and truly can't even talk about it, because I know I just know what it'll do. I don't even want to talk about it. But nevertheless, we're going to find out an awful lot about what we are doing and what's going to happen for the future, for the economy over the next couple of years. We're going to find that out in a couple of weeks, in my opinion. And all we've got to do is keep our eye on the EPA. Just keep our eye on the EPA. Listen, we're already, Obamacare is a done deal. And we already have socialized medicine. And along with socialized medicine. And don't say it's not socialized medicine, because it's exactly what it is. The goal, in my opinion, of this plan is to get everybody on Medicare, and socialized medicine will be ushered in very, very quickly. And the fact of the matter is, it's going to happen. Unions are going to drop, and their employees are going to go on this. Companies are going to not be able to pay on it. Employees are going to go on it. It's just a matter of time before 80% of the population, in a short period of time, maybe a year and a half, a short period of time before 80% of the population is on government health care. That is socialized medicine, folks. They will control everything that happens. There are some calls to the president to drop its cuts in Medicare Well, it's part of his plan, folks. But now there are concerned parents of disabled children and seniors that are concerned about this. I'm afraid that though the support for all of that, and I'm one of them, is raising. I've been talking about it since day one. They might have come late to the party. So, we have socialized medicine, which means more power grab and more social control by the government. Now we're going to get cap and trade, it looks like, by way of EPA, which is going to be the final straw, in my opinion, because I've said this before, cap and trade was the worst piece of legislation ever to hit the halls of Congress. That's why it didn't pass. I'm giving Congress the benefit of the doubt and say that's why it didn't pass. It didn't pass, thankfully. But then we find out months later it's irrelevant that it didn't pass. The reason that the liberals didn't fight for it was because they handed it off by way of rules and regulations to the EPA. So it's irrelevant as to whether it passed or not. 888-589-8840. You're listening to AFR Talk Financial Issues. Let me go to Gene. Gene calling us from Mobile, Alabama.